Hello, my name is Kim Peffley, and I am a consultant with NHPA. Today, we are joined by three great folks from Northwest Hardware in beautiful Montana. Join me in welcoming TJ Comstock, the owner of the Northwest Hardware stores, and Kandis, Albertson, and Jade, Haynie from the management and support teams at Northwest Hardware. TJ, Kandis, and Jade have so graciously joined us today to talk about the implementation of the Everything Disc personal development learning experience and the assessments within their company. They began the journey of utilizing DISC as a tool a little over a year ago, and they'll be answering some questions and sharing some feedback about their experience through the process. So with that said, let's jump right in. Welcome, TJ, Kandis, and Jade. How's everybody doing today?
Great, how are you?
Good. Great, thank you. All right, I'm going to jump in with some questions and feel free to go ahead and answer whoever wants to answer. Have any of you guys used personality assessments in your personal or business life before Everything DISC?
Had not.
I took it when I did the retail class with NRHA.
You took the Everything DISC, right?
I believe it was Everything DISC. We didn't dig into it like we have with you, but yeah, we took the test, I remember.
Okay. And when you guys first started talking about it, or TJ really first started explaining that you guys would be doing some assessments and some additional things, were you guys a little skeptical or more like excited in the beginning to be jumping in?
Both. Skeptical, but also excited to see if it could, actually work.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's two of us. I was skeptical too.
Yeah, which is interesting. I think as we dive in and learn a little bit more about each of your personalities, that kind of adds up, right? So depending on where you fall on the Everything DISC circumplex, it's like you're going to go into this. Someone like me, right? So I'm an I, is like so excited about personality tests. Like I'm like, throw them at me all the time. Yeah. And I can see where some others are going to be like, I'd like to see the research on how this actually pulls together. Exactly. Right? Where's the data behind this? Is this legit or not? Right. Well, good. So when you first read your DISC assessments, they're pretty detailed reports. Was there anything in particular that really stood out to you or anything that surprised you?
I don't know if it was necessarily surprising, but it's kind of sometimes to see it on paper and in words isn't sometimes not kind.
It talked about some of the growth opportunities that maybe. Yes.
Yeah. No, I would agree with Kandis. It was a little brutal seeing it on paper. I thought it was funny how everyone upstairs was pretty much the same. Jonathan, Kandis, and TJ.
Yeah, your support team was very consistent. Yeah. I remember specifically when you guys were doing your assessments, we're sitting kind of like in a U shape. We were doing a training, like a U-shaped table. And Kandis and TJ were looking at your results, and you could see everybody else's results too. And you guys, I just remember you looking like immediately at each other and being like, we have the same exact dot. And you having this kind of like, aha, like that makes so much sense. Like that makes so much sense, right? And then you really were like, okay, I get it. I get why we work well together and why sometimes we might butt heads.
And why some things don't get done.
Yeah. Why a lot of things don't get done.
Where's the execution team? Where's the execution team? Right. Awesome. Yeah, I think it's, somebody, we were talking about DISC with a group the other day, and somebody said, how did you get all this information? Like, who did you pay off to get all this information about me? How do you know so many details through the questions? And I think that's what's really interesting about the assessments is that they really can be really spot on. And so we do spend some time saying, hey, not everything may hit 100%. So what really connected with you and kind of what didn't, and you can really adjust your assessment as well too. Awesome. So going through the training, did it help you to understand yourself a little bit better? I know for me, self-assessment being more self-aware was really helpful for going through DISC. What about you guys?
For sure. The brutal honesty.
Really, yeah. See, the two Ds are just talking over each other.
Yes. We'll do D orders. Okay, 1D first. All right, TJ, you could go first.
No, I thought it was, again, being a D, I kind of think that I already knew a lot about that.
Yeah.
You kind of already know yourself for quite a bit, but there was some areas that were interesting to know more so of how to work with other people who weren't your style.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Jade? What were you going to say about something that maybe you learned a little bit more about yourself?
I just a lot more things to improve on, and then other ways to work with everyone else and not give in, not always say yes, I'm the yes guy.
Yeah. And sometimes that's hard, right? Like you may know it and you may be like aware of that, but to see it on paper makes it a heck of a lot more real. But it's also like a helpful tool because it said, this is something you might want to work on.
Yeah.
And here's how, right? So it kind of helps you a little bit too.
Oh, yeah.
Kandis, what were you going to say?
I mean, it just made you very aware
Yeah.
reading it. Like, I mean, a lot of it we are at least a little bit self-aware of, and you realize you're doing it, but to really see it there and read it. And I think then it makes you think about more the impact of it and stuff, good and bad, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you all kind of touched on it at a certain point, but I think knowing more about your own style and being a little bit more self-aware, but then also learning about the other styles really helped, I could see with your team, and it certainly did for me, help me connect better with my coworkers. Can you guys talk on that a little bit about how it changed the way you communicate with each other?
Go ahead.
The D's are waiting. The B's are gracious that time. Look at that. That was really good, you guys. There's some growth right there. Go ahead,
I mean, especially being a D, because you can be so overwhelming. So it gives you like, hey, I'm getting ready to go talk to Jade. I have to, you just like not in a bad way, but just dialing it back because you understand then what they are and how you're going to have to change what you're doing. Now, if I go talk to TJ, it can be completely different than if I'm going to go approach Jade on something.
Yeah. And I think that that's really helpful too, because you're like flexing or adjusting the way you communicate to know that conversation will be more effective, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Jade? I know you definitely altered some of the way you were communicating after a disc. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, it definitely helped being able to approach TJ or Jonathan or Kandis, even oh man.
Who are you thinking of? Donna?
No. Well, Donna and Scott, I mean, all the managers, we know that because all of our managers are different and how and everyone is on a different scale, but be able to talk to all of them individually. And then for me to be able to talk to them differently than how I would talk to upstairs here.
Yeah. And just kind of saying, okay, I think I know that I need to, if I'm going to be talking to TJ or someone else that's a D, let's say, to be a little bit more to the point and don't get emotional and get and just do the details, right? What we don't need to break it down, right? Keep it simple. Yeah. What about you, TJ? Did you see that change a lot within your team?
Yeah, we had two managers that kind of were butting heads a little bit, and we had them in the same store at the same time. And it was amazing after they did their personality test, all of a sudden they figured out why they rubbed each other's, the wrong way. Mm-hmm. And then they kind of both adjusted their style, and they actually became really, kind of good friends and worked really well together.
Yeah, I think that was really, for me too, a big takeaway for your team, seeing the communication between the two of them as they went through some of the trainings and like how they sat on opposite ends at one point, and then as they trained more, they were like, no, we understand each other now. We've had this moment, and they really shared about that. I thought that was really, really impactful too. And I think we did some additional training on coaching. Do you think that DISC really affected the way you guys coach to your team by adjusting to who you're talking to?
I don't know that I adjust the way that I talk to them very much, but I at least understand better, where they're coming from. So it probably makes me a little more patient.
Yeah. And maybe you don't quite fully realize, but you are at least taking a moment to think about it before you go in and thinking about their style, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Sometimes, right?
Like poor Jade over there, who honestly, Jade was the only personality type that I was surprised by. Mm-hmm. And knowing that I have tormented him for 10 years now, Jade?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, across the table, you looked up and said, sorry about that, Jade. Yeah. And Jade was like, thank you.
When I'm sorry for 10 years.
There was some real healing there, some real healing. That's great. So Jade, what's your style, just to share with everybody?
I was a CS?
Yep.
I remember right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. I think you guys both know that Kandis and TJ are D's, right? All right.
We're not
great.
even
So
like a
Haynie,
DI or a D anything. We're just D's.
Yeah.
D's, yeah, solid D, right? For sure.
Yeah.
When we have the conversation, there's some general rules. We call them the cornerstone principles of DISC, and they're kind of like the house rules of everything DISC. And one of them is no style is better than the others. And I remember TJ specifically saying, except for the D, right? The D is clearly better.
Yeah.
No, they're all equally valuable, and it takes all 4 styles to really be helpful, right? Awesome. So now that you guys have been using DISC for a year, has it really become more of a part of your language? And would you say it's really benefited you and your team?
Yeah, I think that every conversation we have now, all of our manager meetings since or just regular phone calls they all kind of, hey, remember that I'm this personality type, or remember that, I'm this style. So I would say it's become really, really key in our language on how we address each other.
That's awesome. What about you guys?
I would agree. I mean, I think anytime we approach things, I just think it just makes you self-aware, like all the way around, like what you're doing and then the person you're going to talk to. So the communication, you change it depending on who you're going to, which makes it more effective. And so I think it really has helped.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would say, when we get together and then we go to how do we approach each manager, when we have our meeting together, we approach everyone differently in how we're going to present.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think that that's one of the nice things to do is because ultimately the goal is to have a more, cohesive and effective workplace, right? Like improve the culture by communicating more effectively, and then you can ultimately get more done. So when you don't truly understand each other's communication style or just how to effectively work together, it causes a lot more conflict and difficult aspects of things. But if you can really work together and get all that mess out of the way, you definitely get a lot more done. Do you guys feel like that's true? Cut to the chase more a bit, right?
Yep.
Awesome.
Way more effective.
All right, TJ, I got a couple questions for you too, but Kandis and Jade, feel free to pop in at any point if something thinks up. TJ, what made you decide to use the DISC assessments in your business?
Well, you're a great salesperson.
Thank you.
That was the real key. No, I had heard, being on the NRHA board now, NHPA or whatever we're calling ourselves. Some of the other guys that were on there from larger groups than ours had talked a number of times about that they'd used it in their management teams and had gotten a lot out of it. So it was something that we were kind of looking for. And then when it became available through the program that was offered, then we kind of jumped on it.
Okay, great. And do you think it brought some value to your company?
Yeah, I definitely think it did. I mean, it was, again, just opening up some communication. We've had some growth in the last couple of years, brought a lot of different roles on. So having it available to help all these people who didn't really communicate before, everyone was kind of out there on their own little island. Then you bring them all in a room together and expect them to play nice. It kind of helped make sure that happened.
Well, especially with the amount of stores you have and the growth that you're going to need to move people around, and it kind of helps to make sure you've got the right teams together as well, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah. So you guys did some additional, we did everything DISC workplace with your management team and your support team and obviously your ownership group. But you also did a couple additional assessments, including Agile IQ and the work of leaders. Can you talk a little bit about the dialogue amongst your team and maybe the impact that those additional assessments had?
I think that they're mostly, a lot of it's just kind of a continual refinement. The DISC is very thorough, but then the original tests we took are very thorough, but then this kind of adds a whole nother, I guess, spice to what we had already learned, really dialed down a little bit further. I don't know that it necessarily changed how we talk to each other, but it just provided an even deeper understanding.
Yeah, I think that for me, I found it was really interesting when you guys went through the work of leaders as kind of your support team to look at the folks that were basically running the company and to kind of look at what some of your strengths were and some of your opportunities to say, oh, hey, we might have a hole here, or we might need to work on this, and looking at maybe feedback or execution on a couple things. And I think it was helpful probably for you guys to be able to address that, hey, we may need to figure out a better way to give additional feedback or to give response to how actions are going. Does that make sense?
It does. And I'd agree with you. Some of it, of course, also around the time that we did that, then we were blessed with this wonderful pandemic. So
right.
Some of that work has just stayed a little bit stagnant in our group. We didn't have too much of a chance to really expound on it. But but as we've moved forward, I mean, it's still there. We know that we need to, as a group, we have to be a little bit more cognitive of execution, right, Kandis? Because we talk a lot of ideas, but SDs don't get much done really.
Execution and good jobs. Pat on the back.
A pat on the back. Yeah, Kandis and I had a great conversation. I think it was after Agile EQ. It might have been Work of Leaders. I'm not sure. We had a great conversation about feedback. And so some personality styles don't give feedback because they don't need feedback. So you don't know when you need to give feedback because you've never really had the trigger to get the feedback. And so you're not like, oh, this seems like an appropriate time to say, great job, team. But there are team members who are like, well, when am I going to get my great job or attaboy, right? And so we talked about like, hey, that may need to be something, if it's not, if it's an opportunity or an area for your growth, that you may need to build it into your plan, right? And so whereas other styles may be driving you guys crazy because they're like, great job, everyone, I'm so proud. And they're like, calm down and get to work, right? So different people they may need to build more execution into their plans, but it's about saying, hey, we took these great assessments and there are going to be crazy things that happen. No one expected something like the pandemic or COVID to happen, right? But there's going to be crazy things to happen, but you can always go back and pick up these assessments and say, let's build this into our growth plan, our conversations, like where do we want to go in 2021, 2022? Let's pull them back out. They stay very valid and accessible to you to say, hey, we are aware that this is something that we can work on and let's utilize it when we can and put it together. Awesome. So what aspects of the DISC training really stood out to you the most, TJ? And how do you feel like you've learned how to impact how you work?
Probably the aspect that stands out the most is that I guess how accurate it is in describing how people, kind of function in their workplace. Again, as you were just saying, you see how people you work with somebody and you're kind of like, I don't know why they need this constant reassurance that they're doing a great job, but okay, I guess I'll give it to them. So it kind of then, it points to the fact that, they're just kind of programmed differently than I am. So I need to make a cognitive effort to accommodate them. I just think that it's been good for us because we're at kind of a key point where we're trying to grow and we're trying to make sure that we have open communication between our main office and the management group. So I think that's where the real impact's been for us.
Yeah, I think that especially as you grow, the opportunity for disconnect to come in just, extrapolates out so much. And so having a common language to share with each other can be really helpful, especially when communicating or if you're dealing with conflict, or it kind of gives you a common ground to communicate with each other and say, hang on a second, let's talk about our DISC styles and what are we doing right? And what do we need to pull that assessment back out and look at again? Right. All right. So Kandis and Jade, what do you think your biggest takeaway is for you as an individual, and any other thoughts that you may have on everything DISC that you want to share?
I would say, it definitely gave me a lot of growth opportunities to work with everyone upstairs, helped me push to the next level that I need to do. So I'm going to use it to work with Kandis, TJ, Jonathan, and hopefully make myself better in my new role I'm going to take on. So
that's awesome. And I think you had some real aha moments as you were reading through your assessment, and we're kind of having some breakthroughs about, okay, that makes sense. And your team, it was really, I think, impactful for me that everyone was really rallying behind you and saying, and was really supportive and was like, Jade, yay. And I remember there being some real aha moments for you that people cheered and they were like, yay, Jade.
Right to the eyes.
Yeah, we're so proud of you for seeing this. Because
we've all been raising him for so many years.
Yes, we're so proud of of you because you work so incredibly hard and you were very selfless in how you do it, in the sense that like you just will go and everyone cares for you so much. And so it was really good for you to have that kind of moment where everyone could say, we're so proud of you, Jade.
Yeah.
But I do think it's really good and really impactful how you took certain aspects of the report and really put them into like a growth plan for yourself or a development plan for yourself to say, okay, these are some things that I'm aware of that I could do better. And now I know I have some tools that can help me get there.
Yep.
That's awesome. We're very proud of you.
Yeah.
What about you, Kandis?
Being a D, I think it's good to realize that you probably need to dial back a little bit and you can't approach everything like a bulldog. So, I've had a couple instances since then with people, with staff, whatever, and I've kind of decided it's made me stop and like go a different path and go a little gentler maybe than what I normally would have gone. So that's been kind of helpful, I guess, because it hasn't arisen in as many conflicts as maybe there would have been previous to doing this and previous to being that aware of it.
Yeah, I think I remember having a conversation with you specifically about development and you saying, I used to take development and I had a sheet on how I wanted to develop whatever I wanted to train them on, right? So whether it be like a rewards program at the register, and you were like, and I trained everybody the same. And it did not go over the same with everyone. And he said, I specifically remember being like, I think I overwhelmed some of them, and some of them were like, okay, great, good, go. And you said, all right, I think I need to adapt that. Do you think that you've learned a lot from that to say, hey, I may need to adjust how I communicate with different styles?
Yeah. I mean, I think before it was like you would do a training and maybe, a week later, maybe it's a month later, you have to go back and do the same training. And you're like, why didn't you get it? But now like you realize why, right? Because that training that I did wasn't effective for that type of a person. So it's made very aware on that.
And I think it's good when you're building, especially as you guys are really building up some additional development and training programs within your organization, to say, hey, we may need to build in different types of training or different aspects of things to make sure that we're reaching to everybody. Same with communication, right? Not everybody likes talk communication. I mean, I think it's great, but it's talk, right? And some people are going to need the written word, or some people are going to need to have it where they can read it over a series of time, right? For sure.
Yeah.
All right, great. Any other final thoughts from you two on DISC, or any recommendations you may have for folks listening?
Definitely try it.
Yeah.
Take the test. It's, as a group, I don't think anyone ever said it was wrong. That everything that came out of it was right. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. And TJ, what about you? Any final thoughts?
No, I would just, I'd agree with Jade. It's, for what you get out of it, it's definitely worth taking the time and putting a little bit of effort into it. You guys do a great job of presenting it. So I'd recommend it strongly to anybody.
Awesome. Well, I want to personally thank all three of you for taking the time for this call today. And I can't wait to get back out and visit you guys again soon. But until I get out there, keep doing great work and be safe. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks, Kim.
Bye.
Thanks, Kim.
Bye.